Hello there, and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. We're here every week, meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues, and we welcome back an old friend.
Indeed, Michael Figgins will be with us, the head of the executive director of Legal Services of Oklahoma, be talking about what's going on in his world, and it'll be good to see him again.
It is. A lot of good issues, and Michael was reminding us how long he's been doing this type of work, and then he made the comment, "You don't think I've seen a lot." Well, we're going to hear about some of those things today on The Verdict. Michael Figgins is our guest, and we'll be right back.
Right now, 6 feet can feel like a long ways away. But from 6 feet, we can still smile at each other. From our doorways and our stairways, from opposite sides of the street and opposite sides of the country. Through fear and frustrations, we can remind each other that we are still here for each other. Because we can still smile at each other. And we're not going anywhere.
Military service ran in my blood, starting from my father, which joined the Navy. On the Chickasaw side, my uncle, which served in the United States Army. I'm Benjamin Espinosa, Chief Petty Officer, United States Navy, and I'm Chickasaw. I went to the Secretary of Defense's staff at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., which ultimately led to becoming a combat support technician for Naval Special Warfare, specifically SEAL Team 10. I think to be proud and to love your tribe, to love being Chickasaw, you also have to love being American. You also have to love everything that America stands for. Equality, perseverance, professionalism, and power. I want my family to know that their father is a good person, but also feels that he has an obligation to the country and to love this nation. Anything worth having is worth dying for. The military and the country owes me nothing. I owe it everything.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
We want to reach out to every veteran we can in Oklahoma. There's somewhere around 340,000 veterans here in Oklahoma. And half of those are still unaware of the benefits or don't know how to go about getting them.
We help guide the veterans through the VA system. It's a giant maze, and we kind of help guide them through that maze. So our job is to try to help the veterans get everything that they're legally entitled to. There's just a special place in my heart for our Vietnam veterans and our World War II veterans, as well as any veteran, and that's why I do the job.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Yes, as we told you in the open, we are really pleased to welcome back to the set of The Verdict for his second visit, Michael Figgins, the Executive Director of Legal Services of Oklahoma. And it isn't just the old phrase we used to use, legal aid. Of course, they do render legal aid, but they do it now statewide. And Michael is in charge of the whole operation as executive director. He's responsible for everything that goes on. He did his undergraduate work at Arizona State University, did his law work at Gonzaga University, and he has had 43 years of practicing law, rendering legal services to the poor, legal services to people who can't afford to pay for it. So he has devoted his career, literally devoted his career, to helping others who are in need. He's been honored time after time for his service as Legal Services of Oklahoma Executive Director, and we're just pleased to get him back to find out what's going on in his world and see what help he may need. And Mick, I can promise you in advance, Mick, as the last question to Michael is going to be, what can our viewers do to assist? And I hope you'll be thinking about that as something that you might be able to do to assist legal services. Michael, welcome. Glad to have you back.
Good to be back.
Let's talk about the size and scope of Legal Services of Oklahoma. What are we talking about here?
We're talking about a law firm of approximately 200 or so attorneys. Dispersed primarily in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, probably about half. But there's offices throughout all the communities you would think of, dispersed as Choctaw and Guyman and Altus and Miami. So we got all four corners covered. And in that context, there's about 330 total staff. That includes paralegals and the finance people and all the other necessary folks. And we are a special law firm in that we have clients just like every other law firm, but our clients are not expected to pay us, and we don't ask them to pay us, and we do things without compensation, at least directly from the client. So that means the clients we seek, we help are low income, and they come to us in all kinds of situations where they're perhaps losing their home. They could be losing their child. They have lost their job. They've had their car taken away. Someone is actually physically beating them, could be a spouse. All kinds of scams that they are targeted on. You may think, well, they have no money. How come they would be targeted for scams? Well, if you do things in volume, you can scam a lot of people. You make a lot of money. So we're the place for them to come to get access to legal services. There is no guarantee for access to legal services. So if legal aid cannot help you, you're pretty much on your own, and that's a losing proposition. As we all know, the system we have, the courts, it's been constructed by lawyers, for lawyers, and they speak a language there that's even not common to what most people understand. So it's tough to represent yourself, and that's the gap that legal aid tries to fill.
Where does your funding come from?
It comes from a multitude of resources. We have about 100 different funding sources. The big ones would be Legal Services Corporation, which is funded by Congress out of Washington. We get significant dollars from the state, from municipalities, from private philanthropy, and certainly do a lot of grant work, federal, private, and state.
I was going to ask
United
you.
Way?
Yes.
I was going to ask you about that philanthropy. Are there Oklahomans who just say, I want to support this organization, and they write a check?
Yes, we do solicit people to do that. We get about maybe $500,000 a year from that, just individual giving. Law firms provide giving, but most of the private money comes from foundations, primarily from Tulsa foundations.
What's your round numbers? What's your total budget for a year?
$34 million.
Wow.
I know you spent a lot of time recently on the housing problems that especially evident in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, but take place across the state. What can you tell us about your work in the eviction area, and what's the latest on the efforts there?
It continues to be a challenge. As you all know, 1,000 or so people get evicted every month in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, and even more get evictions filed against them. You get a notice and you're required to go to a courthouse again. Strange place, what's going on? Most people don't even bother to show up, and they all get evicted. That's bad. Once you're evicted, no one wants to rent to you. Where are you going to go? You may not have a place to go. You may become homeless. You may take things in your own hands and do something that causes you to be incarcerated. You may need to deal with things and lose your job. Maybe tensions between you and a spouse. Child's not at school. Nothing good comes from it. So legal aid is trying to prevent that. Certainly our city struggles with affordable housing. Legal aid believes that if you can maintain your existing housing, then that's a win. I mean, that's not maybe the solution, but it certainly is part of the strategy. And this is not anything that's new. It's just legal support for renters. I mean, that's a lot to have at stake. Your house, maybe you should have help, because the other side, 90%, they have lawyers, landlords do. And so in preparation for it, I just looked at what other cities are doing and what kind of results they're getting. And these are cities, they're not like San Francisco or New York, places like New Orleans, for example. After a year of what they call right to counsel, providing attorneys for renters, 30% less evictions, and 86% of the time, the people they represent stay in their home. That's in New Orleans. Similarly, I have Cleveland, another town, about the same size as us. Again, they prevent evictions, 90% of the people they represent. And they're getting $4.5 million from the city of Cleveland, but the return on the services is 5 times that. And in Kansas City, not too far from here, Again, their eviction rate success is 99%. And in the first 3 months, the evictions itself have gone down 25%. It's all attributable to just having a lawyer there, a lawyer to represent people. And certainly, it's not just these cities. I mean, it's Milwaukee, Louisville, St. Louis, St. Paul, Toledo, San Antonio, Albuquerque. I mean, I just go on. All the cities that now have funded on their own a right to counsel program so that people facing eviction don't get evicted and don't end up costing the community millions of dollars because they're sick and they're going to the emergency room, they're homeless, they need shelter services.
Those are very impressive numbers. I'm surprised, and well, I shouldn't say I'm surprised, but I had not heard them before. I have become aware in the past couple of years of the use in eviction proceedings of mediation. Is your office involved in representing tenants that are being evicted and representing them in a mediation process?
Not very much, and that's because mediation, I think by its nature, requires two people to agree. Let's mediate this dispute.
Yeah.
Let's you and I talk to a third party and see if we can get something done. Once you get into an eviction, especially if it's, they're serving notices, landlords and tenants are not talking to themselves at that point. I'm mad at you, landlord, because you gave me a notice, and you don't want to talk to me because you figure who knows what Michael may do. So mediation, I want you out. I don't want to mediate, and so it doesn't really help. What does help is when legal aid gets to people like mid-month. For example, I spent my rent money on car repairs. What am I going to do? Well, we're marketing 3 zip codes that we currently have now where we have right to counsel pilots, marketing it heavy for people to get to us. And when they get to us, for example, mid-month, something happens that doesn't happen anywhere else. We get to talk to the landlord. Because once they're engaged, once the landlord's filed, once they have an attorney, you can't talk to them. But if it's mid-month, tell the landlord, tenant B is going to be a little behind, going to be a little late, we'll need to catch up. Here's an agreement for him to catch up. Our experience is the landlords are like, well, okay, fine. That's good. You let me know. You're going to try to catch up. I don't want to evict you. I don't want to have to relet. I don't want to clean it up. And I don't want to have to go through the hassle of filing and get an attorney. So it works well when you can talk things out. It's not quite mediation. It's more like negotiation, but it's working real well.
So timing is everything on that.
Yep.
Let me jump in and get us to our break. Michael Figgins is our guest. He runs Legal Services of Oklahoma. We'll be right back.
At Whitten Burridge, we're litigators. That's all we do. All of our clients, some sort of wrong has occurred to them. We try to right that wrong. Corporate America, they have all the power. It's sort of like going against an army. I like helping the underdog. That's what gets me up out of bed every day.
Our success rate is phenomenal, but that's not all they get. We care about people.
I'm very proud of what we've been able to do for our clients, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to do in the future. There's still a lot of wrongs that need to be righted.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative. And this year, our competition teams rank #2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
The Vet Hero office at the University of Central Oklahoma, it is a one-stop shop for veterans when they're trying to get their education.
I call it my encore job. I get to take care of veterans. We help them transition. I was that guy that transitioned after 24 years, and in the end, GI Bill is a benefit that those soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marine earned. It was the thing that made us the greatest country in the world coming out of World War II, and it will continue to do the same thing for this future generation of service members.
year, safer you. Get your safety on. This year, let's all make it home safe. Make Oklahoma safe.
Welcome back to the Set of the Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers, and our guest is Michael Figgins. Kent?
Michael, you're talking about rendering legal services, and we know that there's a large number of lawyers that do that in law firms around the state. Are they assisting you in any way that's significant, or could you use their help in some areas?
Legal aid could definitely use more help from the private bar, especially for pro bono cases. The American Bar Association, which oversees lawyers nationwide, certainly is very strong effort to increase pro bono. They have conferences all the time. There's lots of different ways to do it. I would say it wasn't that long ago there was like a golden age of pro bono, wherein the larger firms really took professionalism serious, and certainly there would be a person designated as the pro bono person, someone that I could call and say, we have a case. And certainly the young associates were expected. I mean, if the call came in for me, the finger may go to a young associate and say, you take that case, but that was expected. And of course, it got them experience, it got the firm certainly good recognition, and we still do pro bono recognition, but it's not like it was. And the other real serious problem we have is there are 23 counties in the state where the only lawyer is a judge or a county prosecutor. There's no bar what to speak of. So if I had resources, I'd have to go somewhere to get a lawyer. And then that's coupled by the fact that simple matters where all I have to do is appear for 5 minutes, really you can't do it virtually. The courts are not set up to do that. So the Oklahoma City lawyer, if he takes a case in Choctaw, he's going to have to drive to Choctaw, all that windshield time, and nobody wants to do that.
Let me ask kind of a follow-up on that about your services and what you can do and what you don't do. If a particular eviction client has ended up, we'll say, slugging the landlord or getting slugged by the landlord, so that criminal charges are involved, do you represent the defendant in that case?
No, not on criminal charges. That would probably go to the Office of the Public Defender. But in that case, you may think, well, geez, why are you doing anything with this person at all? It's likely that person, again, has violated law, maybe is going to be found guilty, maybe not, but there's usually a family involved. And the average person that we deal with in eviction is not a man or a woman, it's a 5-year-old child. That's who's getting impacted, because those people are going to get evicted one way or the other. So we'll do what we can to keep that family intact, at least in that shelter or in that home, even though one person in that family may be facing criminal charges.
Are there many differences between the way legal aid works in Tulsa as it does to Oklahoma City? Are the two pretty similar? And are the communities similar in the way that they either help or prohibit legal aid actions?
Well, legal aid, obviously in Oklahoma City, Tulsa is still legal aid serves Oklahoma, so that's the same, but the communities are different.
Yeah, how are they different?
Well, the eviction court in Tulsa is probably more amenable. It's not unusual for a Tulsa County judge to say, hey, is there anyone here who needs a lawyer? Legal aid's outside. I mean, we're kind of willing to work, provide space and things. And certainly I think the foundations in the community makes a big difference because there's resources, there's ways to get things done. And but still, I mean, Tulsa County Bar, Oklahoma County Bar, they're certainly supportive, they're certainly doing what they can. And as far as the actual cities themselves, I think they're both trying to do the same thing. I mean, Tulsa just came out with a huge housing plan. And for some reason, eviction prevention just doesn't come naturally like, oh, it's like a recipe. Oh, eviction prevention's not in my recipe. And you have to constantly struggle and communicate and educate and show people just how important it is. And I think we're making inroads in both communities, and I'm hoping both communities will step up.
Because the issue of homelessness is getting under a larger microscope all the time. Mm-hmm. And I guess what you're trying to say is that the eviction process is a very significant part of the homelessness outcome. And I don't know that people necessarily make that connection. They might have a different representation of who winds up homeless. But it might just be as simple as not communicating with their landlord last month, and they wound up homeless, and then all sorts of issues spiraled from there.
In both communities, if you get an eviction filed against you, maybe it gets later dismissed, but if it's filed against you, you have a scarlet E on you, and nobody's going to rent to you.
So if I'm a landlord at that point on, how would I know if this person had that eviction process?
Go to the court network, the records. You just, I look up somebody's name, like, oh, looks like an eviction was filed against you 6 months ago. Sorry. So what do? You're left to rent places that maybe the three of us would say, like, oh my God, people are living here. I mean, mold, bugs, utilities, maybe heating, air. It's bad. There's kids. And you can imagine what happens from that. People are getting sicker, and you're dealing with a landlord probably who's not going to do anything as far as repairs, and that's what you're left with.
I think either on the air or not, I can't remember when you and I were talking about it, but I mean, in which part of this show. Would you say that the support you're getting from the large to medium-sized law firms from a volunteer standpoint, pro bono efforts by their lawyers, has diminished over the last 20 years?
Oh, certainly the last 20 years. I mean, I think the law firms, the big law firms, aren't quite as big as they used to be now. I mean, there's the national law firms. They seem to still have a pro bono culture, but, in some ways, I mean, as a lawyer, I'm like, well, why is it we expect lawyers to do things for free? I mean, I don't get pro bono architects or pro bono doctors very often, or any professionals, but it's just part of the culture of the professionalism of being a lawyer, and it seems like it's maybe diminished, but I'm certainly not going to give up.
There are, in certain states, the state bar involved requires, as a condition of membership, that a certain number of hours per year be devoted to pro bono work, no matter whether the lawyer is a young lawyer, an old lawyer, or an in-between. Would you favor something like that in Oklahoma?
Yeah, certainly 10, 15 years ago, that was popular or not popular, depending on your perspective. There's a handful of places that have mandatory pro bono.
Right.
For example, Florida did mandatory reporting. So you had to report all the pro bono you did, and 2/3 of the attorneys reported, I didn't do any. So they satisfied the rule, so that really didn't help. They thought maybe if we would embarrass people, they would do that. But I think it's just a matter of maybe there's been, we need to probably maybe get closer to the bar, work better with the bar, let them know, because there are people out there now who just will do pro bono at the drop of a hat. Yeah. It's just not as universal as it was. And the profession of law, I mean, there's a lot of small firms now, solos, and they're probably, the response would be like, oh, pro bono? Yeah, I got a half a dozen clients that haven't paid me. That's my pro bono. And, what can you say? I mean, that's significant.
Michael, we have about 30, 40 seconds left. What do you want our listeners to know?
I want your listeners to know that there are communities throughout this nation that are funding right to counsel, funding on their own, funded it through all kinds of creative mechanisms. It could be, various grant programs. It could be taxes or fees. And they're doing that because they realize they have to do it because it's important to their community and it's going to save them 10 times whatever they spend. And I would hope that your listeners can, if they know somebody, can talk to their council person, their county representative, and say, hey, heard that legal aid guy. We need to do something about evictions. We need to prevent that. It's a funnel. It's a pipeline. It's going to keep causing harm to this community. We need to stop it.
Michael Figgins with Legal Aid Services of Oklahoma. Michael, thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You bet.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Kent and I'll be back after this.
This is the epidemic of my generation. This is my HIV. This is my Black Plague.
In the midst of one of our state's largest crises,
Oklahomans are dying from this preventable and treatable disease on a daily basis.
we believe there's hope.
That little pill will cause destruction through your whole life.
Watch the entire award-winning 9-part docuseries Killing Pain, made available by Fighting Addiction Through Education at killingpain.com.
It used to be okay in teachers' lounges. It used to be okay in maternity wards. It was okay in sporting arenas, college campuses, and office spaces. But now that we understand the deadly dangers of secondhand smoke, that's not okay anymore. So why is it okay that thousands of employees are exposed to it every day at work? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's protect hardworking Oklahomans. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
I think for us, once we got started and we began to see the tremendous need just within our state, it really was just a calling for us. The blessings far outweigh any obstacles that we've faced.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Camp Meyers, and we're wrapping up the show with Michael Figgins of Legal Aid Services of Oklahoma.
Yes, Michael was good to give us the time. He's an awfully busy guy and got a lot of good information. And quite frankly, he really does an exemplary job as Executive Director of Legal Services.
And we have some website information for you, legalaidok.org. That's legalaidok.org. And we have a website, theverdict.tv. We'll see you next week.